Well, the best way to learn about an area of the law is to actually write about it. And when we have the new Copyright Act 2021 and there's no book on it, then I say to my colleagues, let's write a book on it. And they immediately say no. But eventually, nearly 2 years later, we have a finished book.
I think because me being the youngest in the firm, I think I probably have more in tune to things like cryptocurrency or like blockchain and streaming, which I think involves a lot of copyright aspects. It's just that people don't really know about it, like things that you post on Instagram, things that you stream live, whether you can actually stream a match and then comment on it on a stream and not be infringing copyright. I think a lot of people don't really know very much about that aspect. I think we do delve into a little bit of this in our book as well.
And I think it's very important for people to realize that copyright, everybody owns copyright, from individuals to small companies to big businesses, but often they don't understand what they can and cannot do about it.
I come from a communications background, and so I have a lot of friends who are in the media industry. I have had some familiarity with the industry and some of the creative output, and I mean clearly copyright is something that's very relevant to that area, and I think just the application part of it, turning the theory into something that's applicable in industry, is something that I could bring a unique perspective to.
I think for me the challenge was that we thought we would finish it in a couple of months. So I was going away on maternity leave, and I actually thought that I would be writing a few chapters and that when I return to the office we will finish the book, we'll submit the draft. But the subject was so vast that we took more than 2 years to complete it.
I think the difficulty was the depth of the issue, because you wouldn't think that the copyright legislation would be so difficult to actually go through, especially since they already said that this is a simplified version in plain English. But the truth is there are so many layers and so many nuances to the language and just to the structure and going back to its history, etc. So it just took much longer because of that, I think.
And also one of the difficult things was to make sure that this was a book that somebody who was not a specialist could pick up and use and learn from, as well as going into sufficient detail that the specialist could understand how the law had changed and looking at particular issues in the detail that they need. So we were trying to do both of those things, and hopefully we've succeeded. Well, we have a primer of the basic issues of copyright that people who haven't come to the area before can read through, and we've had a lot of good feedback about that, as it explains at a relatively high level what is a very complicated field. But then we go into the details of the new Act and go through every provision and explain how it works and how it relates to other aspects of the Act as well.
I think the entire area of copyright is actually very complex, but what we tried to do is that rather than it just being an annotation of the Act and the statute, we tried to include where possible real life examples about how copyright does exist in this particular scenario and what you can and cannot do with that particular work.
And I think you looked at the area of AI, which is an area that a lot of people are considering at the moment.
Yeah, so what we also looked at is technology. So the Act is drafted in a future-proof way, so it's technology neutral. And I think at the time, generative AI wasn't really in the picture yet, or there weren't commercial users of it at the point. So when we looked at it at the time, we were looking at it conceptually and looking at how the cases and how the Act is drafted and how a question of AI could be addressed. So we've already covered that. Obviously that wouldn't answer every single question, but that the courts have yet to consider this issue. And so these would be probably like steps or the framework in which the Singapore courts may address the issue.
And what we try and do is guide people as to what the issues are and occasionally suggest what we think are the answers, but we don't go very heavily into speculation. We do point out what are the issues you should be thinking about. Yeah, we set out quite clearly in the book, because of its structure, the logical way of proceeding through a copyright issue, finding out, is there an author? If so, who is the author? Does the author also own the copyright? Because it's only the owner of copyright who can sue somebody for infringement or an exclusive licensee. And then we look at the question of, is there a copyright work in the first place? And the answer to that is usually yes, because the requirements are set very low. But we then have to look at, has this work been infringed? And it is infringed if you take the whole or a substantial part of the work. The question of substantial, what is substantial, is something that we look at in a lot of detail, because that really does depend on all the facts of a particular case. And even once you've decided that there is a substantial taking of somebody else's copyright work, there may be an exception or a defense that allows you to do it. So we set out very clearly the process that you have to go through in order to decide, do you have a problem or do you not? Whether you're the user of a copyright work or you're the owner of a copyright work. I think because it is an area which affects everybody, and what we try and do is make it understandable to the beginner and the practitioner at the different levels of knowledge.
Clearly, copyright is an area that everyone gets in touch with. Everyone knows, everyone sees that C notice. It's something that is part of almost daily life as you flip through the papers, read a book, etc. But not everyone knows exactly what it's about or how it could be applicable to their lives and its implications. So we tried to make the book as accessible as possible so that the layperson could read it and maybe gain some form of understanding as to how it could apply in his or her life. And for practitioners, it's also, I feel, it goes deep enough, it goes into the layers and nuances of the new legislation so that they can actually use it in their practice as well.
And I think one of the things which may be worthwhile mentioning is that this is something which is all around, but there is no register that you can go and check to see whether or not somebody owns copyright. And so you need to understand how the whole thing works without being able to go to the land registry or to the patent registry in order to check who owns the land or the patent. With copyright, it arises automatically, which is why everybody owns their own copyright works, and you need to understand what the consequences of that are.
So a lot of people may be scared off by the copyright notice,
Yeah.
not realizing
Yeah.
that actually it's just something people put there.
Please read the book.
Yeah.
No, I just realized
It's okay.
I was talking in my high-pitched voice, so this is gonna come out like chipmunk on video. GG.
This could go in the blooper.
No, don't put it in the blooper. I have a reputation to maintain.